NFL free agency is almost here, and things are about to get crazy. And for the Eagles, they got a few interesting developments ahead of all the madness, including some shocking news on Myles Garrett, as the dream of the Eagles landing him in a trade is officially dead. Also, we got a big update regarding Trey Hendrickson and the possibility of him being traded to Philly. Meanwhile, some other big-name pass rushers just hit the market, so could the Birds target them in free agency, or will they look elsewhere? Plus, we got some news on Isaiah Rodgers, as one of the Birds' biggest rivals is potentially looking to steal him. So, we're going to talk about that and all the other latest news before the free agency frenzy begins, starting right now. NFL free agency is right around the corner, as the legal tampering period will open up on Monday, March 10th, and even though things have already been pretty crazy with players getting released or extended or with big trades happening, you know things are about to get even crazier, with players changing teams left and right, big contracts expected to be signed, and just an overall shakeup going on throughout the entire league. And for the Philadelphia Eagles, you know that they are not going to stay silent. I mean, sure, maybe things are going to be a little bit less eventful than last offseason just due to the limited cap space that they have, but if there's anything we know about Howie Roseman, it's that he always has a plan, he always has something up his sleeve, and he always finds a way to make significant moves and improve the roster. So buckle up, because free agency is about to be fun. And to make sure you guys don't miss any news or updates, then just make sure you guys are subscribed to this channel and you have notifications turned on, because I'm going to be covering it all, whether it's through videos or going live. But of course, as I said, the craziness isn't just going to start next week, as it's already begun, and I'd say easily the most surprising move from this past week was the Birds signing Saquon Barkley to a record 2-year contract extension worth $41 million. And now, just days after that happened, we have the details, and they're pretty interesting. As you can see here, Over the Cap has the whole contract breakdown, and it's a pretty typical standard Howie Roseman type of contract, as the base salaries for all 4 years are really low, and then the cap numbers, they go up pretty significantly as time goes on. As we expected, it's a very heavily backloaded contract. There's also a bunch of void years at the end of it, so again, you know, pretty standard Howie Roseman type of contract. Some interesting notes here being that for 2025, his cap hit is actually going to be $6.6 million, which is a little bit of a step above what it was going to be before he got the contract extension, meaning that it actually reduced their cap space by $1 million. And then in addition to that, with the way this contract is structured with the dead money here, you see those first 2 years, super high dead cap hit should they move off of him, but that third year in 2027, if the Eagles did want to move off of him at that point, they very easily could, because the cap hit for a pre-June 1st cut is just $3.4 million. For a trade, it's even less than that. So, you know, it's interesting. Obviously, Barkley is very well deserving of this contract. There is no debate about that. However, he is 28 years old, and there's a lot of wear and tear on his body. So if for whatever reason, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but if for whatever reason he were to decline at this point and the Eagles needed to move off that contract, they could pretty easily do so at this point. So that's definitely worth noting. That said, I hope Barkley plays out this entire contract extension through the 2028 season and they never even have to think about moving on from him. And again, it was a very well-deserved deal for Barkley and a fantastic move by Howie Roseman to get your superstar running back and probably your best player locked up for the long term. But now, staying with moves that have already happened, we got some big news in the NFC East the past couple of days regarding the Birds' biggest competition, as the Commanders have been active, first re-signing linebacker Bobby Wagner on Thursday to a 1-year, $9.5 million deal, so he's going to stay with Washington for at least one more season. And this is definitely a good move for the Commanders, considering the leadership and high-level play that Wagner brought to their defense last season, as he put up 132 tackles and 2 sacks, along with just being, again, one of the big leaders for that team and helping them have the best season that franchise has seen in a long time. And another guy who helped do that is star tight end and also former Eagle Zach Ertz, and he also just re-signed with Washington to a 1-year, $6.5 million deal worth up to $9 million with incentives. So again, I mean, we Eagles fans know how good Zach Ertz is. He just kind of had a career revival last season in Washington, so he's going to stay there for one more year in what is no doubt yet another good move for the Birds' rivals. However, on the flip side, they also just lost a longtime starter on their defense, as on Friday, Washington released veteran defensive tackle Jonathan Allen after 8 years with the team. And this comes after reports saying that the Commanders were trying to trade Allen, so it looks like they couldn't find anyone willing to take on that contract and also give up assets, so they just had to cut him in a move that was clearly to save cap space, as his cap hit for 2025 was set to be $22 million. By releasing him, they saved $16 million, so it makes perfect sense. Now, Allen was obviously a star in his time with Washington, and he was a huge piece of their defense for a long time. That said, he wasn't as important last year, as he missed much of the season with a torn pec. He played in just 8 regular season games and 3 playoff games. Now, in the games that he did play, he still definitely showed some ability, but he definitely didn't look as good as he did in the past. That said, he's now still going to hit free agency as one of the top defensive tackle options out there. So now the question is, could he be an option for the Eagles? Well, I would say, despite Allen being on the older side and also coming off that serious injury, plus even with the fact that maybe he's not quite as good as he used to be, I still think Jonathan Allen's a really good player in this league, and if you could bring him in, like if the Eagles could sign him for a good value contract, bring him in, have him be a veteran guy on the defensive line, his snap count wouldn't have to be super high, he could just rotate in and out with guys like Moro Ojomo and Jordan Davis on the interior of the Eagles D-line. I think that would be a great move, and I think he could be a really productive player for this defense. That said, like I mentioned earlier, Allen probably is going to be one of the top defensive tackle options on the open market, and I feel like other teams are probably going to throw a decent amount of money at him. So it's just going to be all about what does he cost at the end of the day. So the bottom line is, if the Eagles can afford it comfortably, then I would like it, but I just don't know if that's going to be the case. So we'll have to wait and see. But now, moving over to the edge rusher conversation, we got a couple of things to talk about regarding Eagles fans' 2 dream trade targets for this offseason, starting with Myles Garrett, as we got some breaking news on him today, and with it, the dream is officially dead. As unexpectedly, after all the drama and saying he never wanted to play for the Browns again, Garrett turned right around on the day right before free agency, and he signed a mega 4-year extension with Cleveland worth $40 million a year and $123 million guaranteed, making him easily the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. So again, I mean, this is not what I was expecting, but just like that, Garrett is off the trade market, he's staying with Cleveland, and after all the speculation throughout this entire offseason by myself and other Eagles creators and writers and news sources, the Myles Garrett to Philly rumors are officially all for naught. And honestly, at this point, I mean, I was kind of getting sick of talking about it because I didn't expect the Eagles to be able to land him anyway, like I said many times. And I think it's safe to say that after the contract he got, getting $40 million a season, they definitely could not have afforded that. So we can now officially stop talking about it, as Myles Garrett is staying in Cleveland. As for the Eagles' other dream trade target in Trey Hendrickson, though, this one actually still has a chance, especially since it sounds like the Eagles really wouldn't have to give up too much in a trade to get him, as it was speculated by NFL insider Jonathan Jones on Friday that if a deal does get done, the Bengals would be seeking around a second-round pick. And for the Eagles, I mean, if you're just thinking about what it would cost to actually acquire him in a trade, I would do that in a heartbeat, and it works out absolutely perfectly, considering that the Eagles have the last pick in the second round. So, you know, could you do a swap with that pick for Trey Hendrickson straight up? Maybe, according to this report. And again, as I said in my last video, what adding Trey Hendrickson to this defense would do is just absolutely insane. That said, even with the doable trade compensation, an Eagles trade for Trey Hendrickson just doesn't seem like the most likely thing to me based on the massive contract extension that he's set to get. As he has 1 year left on his deal, he's got an $18 million cap hit, and according to Jeremy Fowler, he is set to become one of the highest paid non-QBs in the entire league.
So Cincinnati came into March hoping to pay a trio of stars, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Trey Hendrickson, at least pay them eventually. So they did make a contract offer to Hendrickson. They tried. But given the pass rush market and where it's going, and Hendrickson wants a deal well above $30 million a year, Bengals couldn't quite get there commensurate with his skill set. So he said, look, in person, by the way, went into Cincinnati, met with the team, said I'd like to be out. They at least entertained it. They're open to taking offers, fielding those, seeing what is best. Now, some teams I talked to believe that a first-round pick would definitely get it done, but maybe a day 2 package or, second-round pick and some change could get them to the finish line. Washington could make another move. They made the Deebo Samuel move. We'll see if they want to get a pass rusher. Atlanta could be lurking. I mean, there'll be some teams in the mix here for sure.
Yeah, so there you go. Not only did Fowler not mention the Eagles as a suitor, which, to be fair, anything is possible with Howie Roseman, so that's not as big of a deal, but he also said that Hendrickson is set to be paid well over $30 million a season. Plus, there's also rumors out there saying that the Bengals actually did offer him around that mark, and a deal still didn't get done. So, I mean, there's probably a decent chance that those rumors and reports aren't true, but regardless of that, paying a guy $30+ million a season would be really tough for the Eagles to afford, considering that they already have guys under contract that are being paid a crazy amount of money, and they also have a ton of guys that they're going to have to pay moving into the future. So again, I'm never going to fully rule anything out, but to me, a trade for Trey Hendrickson just doesn't seem super likely, but I could be wrong, who knows. However, a guy that I do see as a more realistic target at the edge rusher position is Harold Landry, as the Titans just released him on Friday to save cap space after they failed to find a trade partner. And Landry's a guy that I've talked about on this channel before, but just to give a refresher, the guy's been a pretty productive player and consistent pass rusher during his career with the Titans. I mean, this past season in 2024, he had 9 sacks. He also had 10.5 sacks in the season prior. He did miss the 2022 season with an injury, but the season before that in 2021, he had 12 sacks. Plus, on top of that, Landry has been a really good run defender, ranking 6th in run stops among edge rushers this past year, and he just consistently puts up numbers and plays a high percentage of snaps on defense. So you would think that he could be a really good option for the Eagles to go after in free agency if they want someone cheaper than Trey Hendrickson or Josh Sweat. However, there are some drawbacks with Landry, as despite getting a lot of sacks, his pressure rate is actually pretty low typically, and this past season, his pass rush win rate of just 4.8% was last among qualified edge rushers, plus he's also getting a little bit more up there in age at 28 years old, which, isn't too old, but his numbers do suggest that he has been slowing down a little bit. So this is definitely concerning if you ask me, and with Landry still likely to land a significant payday in free agency, I'd say it's not worth it for the Eagles then. Now, I mean, if you could get him for cheap on a good value contract, that's one thing, and I actually do think it would be a good move in that situation. However, in my mind, that's probably not the most likely thing that's going to happen, and again, I just would not pay big money for a guy like Landry. So I don't really think it's going to happen, but we'll see. Besides, again, as I said in my last video, there's plenty of other guys out there on the free agent market on the defensive line that the Eagles could target that would be great additions. I mean, like I talked about previously, Malcolm Koonce from the Raiders is a guy who I do like. He had 8 sacks in 2023, then he missed the entire 2024 season with an injury, so his value's probably not going to be quite as high as it would have been. I think he's definitely a guy that the Eagles could go after to be a good addition to the edge rusher rotation. Then you got a guy like Azeez Ojulari from the Giants, who personally I really like. He was linked to the Eagles at the trade deadline, and I said then I think he would have been a good addition. And he's got high upside. He's been a really good pass rusher in spurts for the Giants during his career. He's not been super consistent, as he has been limited with injuries, but again, I do think he would be a good addition to the defensive line and pass rushing rotation. Then you got a guy like Draymond Jones, who is mainly a defensive tackle, but he's had experience playing for Vic Fangio. He's had experience playing under Clint Hurt. He's been a pretty productive pass rusher and player during his career, putting up around 4, 5, 6 sacks every single year, and he just got released from the Seahawks, so, if you signed him, he wouldn't count against the compensatory pick formula. I think he's definitely another guy, especially with the familiarity, that the Eagles should target. And there are so many more options that I'm not going to get into, but again, there's just a lot of good, cheaper options for Howie to go after on the defensive line, an edge rusher, defensive tackle, whatever. And as I said all offseason, I think that that's the route that the Eagles are going to end up going. So we'll see what happens. Again, free agency is going to get crazy, so make sure you guys are subscribed and you have notifications turned on so you don't miss any of the coverage. And that includes what happens to cornerback Isaiah Rodgers, as with Slay being released. He's a guy that potentially just became a lot more of a priority for Philadelphia to re-sign. However, a recent report is suggesting that one of the Birds' division rivals could be trying to swoop in and steal him, as Giants beat writer Pat Leonard reported Saturday morning that, per sources, New York is expected to be interested in Rodgers during free agency. Plus, it was reported today by Aaron Wilson that Rodgers is expected to have a healthy market in free agency, with teams like the Giants, the Cowboys, along with the Panthers and Buccaneers being interested. So, again, this is going to be something to watch starting tomorrow. I mean, could the Giants actually sign Rodgers, or could the Cowboys actually sign Rodgers, or any of these other teams, or could some of these teams, mainly the NFC East division rivals, just be trying to drive the price up so that Philly has a harder time signing him? I don't know, we'll just have to wait and see, but I will say this. There's no question in my mind that Philly is the place that Isaiah Rodgers wants to be.
Hey man, I know A.J. Brown came out with his little mannequin challenge, but look at the details on my mannequin, you see? Yeah, wristbands, thigh pads, undershirt coming out, orange sleeves, all that, man. It's the details, yeah. Super Bowl champs right there, you hear me?
Again, I think Isaiah Rodgers is a very good player. I'd love to see him be able to compete for that starting cornerback job opposite Quinyon Mitchell next year, assuming Darius Slay's not back. And he loves Philly, but again, like with everybody else, it's just going to be about whether the Eagles and him can come to a fair agreement that works for both sides. Again, I certainly would not mind having him back, but we'll just have to wait and see. But that said, again, free agency is almost here and things are going to get crazy. And personally, I'm really excited to see what the Eagles are going to do. I mean, I feel like it's kind of hard to get a read on what exactly their plans are. Again, I don't think they're going to make too many huge moves, but I'm still very excited to see who they add, who they bring back, and just everything that they do. So if you guys don't want to miss any of that, then make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because you already know I'm going to be covering it all. And also, make sure you guys drop a like on this video as well to show some support. It really does help me out a ton. See if we can get to at least 700 100 likes on today's video. That would be greatly appreciated. And also, leave a comment down below. Who do you think the Eagles are going to sign in free agency? And also, if you want to watch another Eagles video going more over the Trey Hendrickson thing and just some other Eagles news, you can check this out right here. And now with all that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this one, guys. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.